Thank you all so much for coming. We're going to get started in just a bit, but my name is Lauren Willis. I'm one of the career advisors at the Malone Center, which is right over there if you've never been to our office. But these are our lovely panelists here on Zoom. They are on Zoom because none of them actually live in Greenville anymore. But I will let them introduce themselves, and then we also have Dayna, who is our employer. She's in the back getting some water, but I have a couple of questions to ask them just to kind of open, get us started, but then I will open the floor to you all, just so you can kind of get an idea of what it is like to be a Furman student, be a Furman International student, and then move beyond Furman. So without further ado, if y'all just want to go around and introduce yourselves, and then kind of we'll get started.
Okay, I can go first. Hey, I'm Aneesh. I'm an international student from India. I was class of 2018. I'm a product designer at a software company called Pega right now. And yeah, I was computer science, studio art, and Asian studies triple major at Furman, but I chose to go like the design route, and I'm in New York right now.
My name is Patrick Musau. I'm currently a software engineer at Google. I'm originally from Kenya. Went to Furman from 2013 to 2017, then went to Vanderbilt to do my PhD, and then ended up at Google. It's nice to meet all of you and look forward to chatting.
I can go next. Hi, my name is Mehmood Mallick. I graduated in 2017 too. With Patrick, I studied computer science at Furman, and I worked at Furman for 5 years as a web developer. Currently, I am at Georgia Tech, where I'm completing my master's in computer science, and I'm also a web program manager at the IT department in Georgia Tech. And yeah, that's my quick overview. And I'm from Pakistan. I don't know if I said that already, but.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jdid. I'm from Syria, and I stayed at Furman for my Master of Science in Community Engaged Medicine. I lived in Virginia for 4 years prior. And I am currently at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I'm the manager for the Arab Health Initiative, part of the Immigrant Health and Cancer Disparity Service.
All right. Hey, I'm in person. So hey, on TV screen, Dayna Babb. I obviously the employer here. I did not attend Furman. I am local though, born and raised here, and have always worked in the upstate. So I went to USC Upstate, and then interned with Milliken and Company, worked for them in process improvement and production management for about 2 years. And then I moved into human resources, and I am now in sales, all with the same company, now known as Sage Automotive Interiors, though, because I was part of the automotive division. And when Milliken separated from, when the automotive division was let go from Milliken, we became Sage. So I've done everything in HR, from recruiting at schools, working in manufacturing, also most recently doing M&A work. I handled all of our visas for our international hires. And then throughout that process, if we did visas from one location to another location, I also was involved in that. So very familiar with the process, especially when it comes to being in school with a visa and looking for internships and hiring, you know, full term after that. So nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So the first question I have, and this is primarily for y'all on Zoom, and then we'll kind of gather for everyone, but what is kind of your story, how you got from Furman to where you are now? So I know that for some of y'all that's sooner rather than it happened quicker, and for others you got, I know, went on to other schooling. So just kind of an overview of that path. And
so I graduated from in 2018, and then after that, like I was just looking for a job. I knew that I wanted to be in a bigger city than Greenville, and primarily I love New York. It's a design hub in the US, and most like I wanted to work in branding at the time. So then I got a job at Penguin Random House. It's the publishing company that you guys might know about it. and I was in the brand marketing department there for the children's book. So I wasn't designing books, but I was doing the branding for it. So if you ever saw some material for Elmo's 50th birthday for Sesame Street, that was me. But yeah, so after that, again, I can talk more about this, but there were like issues regarding like visa, like H-1B, like since they're a publishing company, they said that they're not as comfortable sponsoring a visa, which is to the contrary when I was hired. But anyways, so later I chose to move more into the tech side, since I mentioned that I am a computer science major as well. I wanted to do web design when I first came to Furman, but during my time at Furman, product design had developed to a point that web design was not as appealing to me anymore. So I moved to product design and I got a job at Pega. And yeah, I've been there ever since. And there was like a big pandemic between. So yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah, I think my journey to where I am is a little bit non-linear. So at Furman, I wanted to do engineering, but as you all know, Furman is not an engineering school. So I ended up majoring in physics and then minoring in computer science and math. But after that, when it came time to graduate, I thought I wanted to do web development. But at the same time, through talking to professors, knew that I wanted to pursue higher education as well. I wasn't exactly sure which one I wanted to do. So I applied for both when I was leaving Furman. Turns out that being a web developer didn't work out for me, but grad school did. So I ended up going to Vanderbilt, where I studied electrical engineering. During graduate school, I had a couple of internships because when you go to grad school, there's kind of two directions in general that people take. They either stay in academia and become professors, or they go into industry. So during my grad school experience, I did a couple of internships. One was at a robotics company, and I enjoyed being in industry a lot more than I enjoyed writing papers. So when it came time to graduate, I had some good connections with respect to the people I did the internships with. Ended up applying to a bunch of jobs, and lo and behold, Google was the only one that actually hired. So that's how I ended up here.
So basically, kind of similar with Patrick, I wanted to pursue engineering first when I came to Furman, but I kind of switched gears and turned to computer science in my sophomore, junior year. And that led me to the web development track for my career. And that's something I was keeping, but I was also open for a PhD program because it's kind of hard to find a job right as an international student after an undergrad, especially if you don't have a lot of internships, which I did not have. But I got lucky in a way that I had studied away in Edinburgh, where I made some connections with the communication studies majors. So it was a communication study program. So I met all these students from communication studies department, which somehow connected me with the communications office at Furman. So I got my first role as a web developer at the communications office once I graduated from Furman. And I stuck there. I kind of learned a lot about web development and software development and things like that. I kind of transitioned into program management while I was at the role at Furman. I kind of led the latest website design project. I don't know how much of you have noticed the new Furman website since it was launched in August, I believe. So I was part of that project. I was kind of leading the technical side of it. But there came a time where I was kind of came to a point where it was best for me to like complete a master's degree and pursue further opportunities. So that's why I kind of had to say bye to Furman and pursue my current master's and my role at Georgia Tech. So that's how I got here today. So
I figured since my Furman insight is limited to a year, I'll give you some insight about myself as a person. And so for my undergraduate, I did a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies. Prior to applying to Furman, I felt strongly about not pursuing a master's. And I came across the program one day, Community Engaged Medicine. I'm pretty sure everyone at Furman is aware it's the only national program of the kind. And it combined my interests perfectly. But what I enjoyed the most about coming to Furman was that my thesis is actually I attribute a lot of my current success to my thesis because it was exactly within my specialty, within what I do now and what I did before. So I specialized in Arabic-speaking populations with limited English proficiency. My thesis explored adverse clinical outcomes and linguistic barrier, or what I call the linguistic marginalization. So, a one-year program at Furman was extremely intense. Even though I was there for a year, I can already tell that everyone knows that we're all like extremely hardworking and very hard for us to set a work-life balance, and which kind of narrowed my vision a little bit of what I could do past Furman. It was very hard, moving from a master's, coming from a small town, a second small town, actually, going out into the bigger world, not knowing exactly what you could do with a very niche master's, but also very niche specialization. And so job searching was definitely very difficult for me. I will say that as a Syrian student as well, because we all know that our legal limitations look very different based on our passports. So, navigating that, I was very grateful that one thing that I will, always hold on to as someone who graduated from Furman is the relationships we built with our professors. I will very confidently say that my main driving force with, getting to where I am now is because my advisor was the one who really sat me down and was like, these are your qualifications. These are your skills. This is what you've been doing here for a year. And that really broadened the way that I viewed myself within, I guess, society. It's so easy for us as students to focus down on the books and our stressors. So now I was, looking into different positions, definitely got rejected from many of them. And I came across this weird thing called the Arab Health Initiative. Little did I know, and it was at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And yeah, I didn't have any connections here. I didn't really expect to go somewhere that, was well-renowned or anything of the sort. But one thing that, I did carry along from Furman was that niche interest. That's what caught their eye. And, that's how I'm thriving here. I work with Arabic-speaking patients. I educate in both English and Arabic. I do case management, patient navigation. I lead the Arab American Breast Cancer Education Referral Program. And surprisingly enough, it's all within my specialty. And so, yeah, that's how I got to where I am now.
So kind of diving into how our current students can get to where you all are one day. What is something that you feel like international students or that you bring to the table, a strength, something unique that domestic students do not necessarily bring to the table? And how can they showcase that throughout, whether that's looking for internships or looking for jobs?
I feel it's not that domestic students don't have that, but they have the comfort of home. I think there is an imminent threat all the time that you have to do the best in order to prove yourself that you're the best, in order to get the opportunities that some might get otherwise easily. One example I'll give you is that there is a time limit to when you can find a job right when you graduate. There's a few days that if you go past those days, then it's game over. It feels like that 4 years that you put into working hard amounts to nothing if you can't find a job in 90 days. So I think at Furman, I was really helpful that it counts when you're unemployed. So I was working in the same department that Mehmood worked in the marketing department as well. And they kept me longer employed so that those days don't count down. So I'm very fortunate about that. I would like to mention about failure because we talked about it. I applied to 322 jobs before I got my first job. So it is definitely not easy. You have to be persistent. I maybe heard back from 50 jobs and 40 of them didn't want to talk to me after they found out I don't have a green card or a citizenship. And similar things happen to that. A very big telecommunication company, I'll not name this because it's being recorded, but probably the biggest telecommunication company. I was going to be in their 5G rollout branding initiative. I was going to be the global head of that. But as soon as they found out in the last interview that I need sponsorship, I got ghosted actually for a few weeks. And then I found out I got rejected. So things like that. The big parade that they have in New York for Thanksgiving, that company rejected me on the same basis. I was going to be part of the branding project, but things like that. So I think you have to be persistent, which you are. You have to be adaptive. You already are, like all the international students, because you've left home to come here to face the difficulty. Just keep reminding yourself why you made the decision to come here. And I think that has helped me, be persistent and like be adaptive. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I think, if I would have to describe some of the strengths that international students have, it's resilience under a lot of things. I think a lot of us are very detail oriented because you've already had to manage your own status. You already know how to fill on your own taxes and all that kind of thing. So you have so many strengths in terms of, what it takes to get things done. The other thing is just like cross-cultural understanding. I think there's a real strength that international students have there. The people who haven't traveled much don't really gain unless you've immersed yourself in another experience. There's a wealth of perspectives that you have that nobody else has. So for example, for big corporations or even small corporations, there's a perspective you bring to the development of products, the development of strategies, the people who haven't been in the seats that you sit in don't have. So you will really understand the implications of decisions that people are making. You'll understand the certain policies that people don't understand. There's just a wealth of experience that you possess that honestly nobody else has. So just remember that at the same time as you are searching for jobs, which sometimes can be difficult, not sometimes, it's always difficult. Just remember that you have something invaluable from the seat that you sit in that nobody else has. There's a perspective that company won't have without you. So just remember that. I'd say that's your greatest strength.
I think Aneesh and Patrick kind of covered a lot of good things that we bring as an international student. The diverse perspective, the different way of looking at things because of we all kind of came from different cultures and backgrounds, and we immerse ourselves in this, especially at Greenville is not a typical cosmopolitan city in the US. So you have to adjust yourself based on the microculture you have there. So it kind of builds that character and personality that will help you, fit in any other company and their culture. And so definitely that's something you can talk about in your personality or behavioral, interviews. Once you get an interview for the position, that will probably stand you out of the other. I think you can sometimes forget, because usually when you say that you're international, the companies reject you. So sometimes you try to hide that fact until the end when you get the job. But I guess the other perspective is, if a company is open to international students, then you can definitely use that as a strength versus a weakness when you're applying for jobs. So that's, I guess, my perspective too. Yeah.
I think that our greatest strength would probably be having to be in survival mode throughout like our journey at such like formative years. And I know survival mode is a very bad word. I hate it. I hate survival mode, but it's true. You come as an international student, whether you do have a support system here or not, you are alone. Like this is your journey. You have no way out. Either you succeed, either do what you're here to do, but you are on a timeline at the end of the day. So you're really dealing with everything that a normal student would, deal with as a student or as an undergrad or as a grad student, etc. But on top of that, there is that ticking clock that is never going to go away. Whether your papers are expiring in 4 years, whether they're expiring tomorrow, we all have a mental deadline that we have to live by. And so, yes, back to what Patrick and Aneesh were saying. So yeah, we kind of have to be detail oriented. There are skills that aren't necessarily, it's not a privilege for us to have. It's kind of something we are forced to kind of like acclimate to because we need them to survive successfully. That's why we're here. We can't choose to one day, just up and leave everything, because papers don't work that way. Everything's out of our control. And the only thing that is within our control is ourselves. It puts a lot of pressure on us, but it forces us to bring something that, you know, someone else might not be able to bring to the table. And as Patrick was saying, we all like come from different walks of life. You know, Mehmood was talking about diversity, etc. But even more so, it's once you know what you're interested in as an international student, the way that you show that could look differently than, you know, from a domestic student who can have that same interest, but you've kind of had to go through so many hoops, and it kind of gives you a deeper approach to understanding the system. So it's, I would say, a positive and a negative, but it works for the employers. So they'll definitely be happy about it.
From the employer side, I would say that, this was mentioned by one of you, or a couple of you actually, but there are a lot of employers out there that as soon as they learn that, oh, we've got to, you know, go through the whole visa process, and a lot of them will just cut it down for multiple reasons. I mean, it is a cost. It's not that big of a cost, honestly. It's time consuming. You're not guaranteed that the student, once you hire them, will want to stay for longer and go through the whole process. They may want to support getting, you know, continuing your visa or getting you on an L visa or whatever situation the employer is in that they can do. But then they may not want to support a green card, or you may decide that you want to go back home, or just there's a lot more that they feel that they're taking on. Me personally, I always appreciated when someone would tell us up front that yes, you know, yes, I'm on this type of visa. Yes, I need to be hired within this number of days. I have this type of interest in my future. And walk through that. The communication is so important. I mean, we hired so many, I mean, probably, I say so many, but we're not a huge company. You know, we're like total 5,000 employees now globally. Previously, when we first separated from Milliken, we were 750 employees globally. And so we've grown dramatically over the years, but even at that point, we probably had 4 or 5 people on a visa status of some sort. And then when we would start recruiting and going to Clemson and Carolina, and Furman isn't one that we recruit at as much because we do typically hire engineers, but the people that would tell us up front, you know, with straight communication, this is what I'm on, and this is the support that I need. I would say that those are the ones that just got much further in the process and then got hired. And it doesn't always work out where they stay with us forever. We typically do always support a green card in the end of it if the person is willing and wanting to. But I would just say that it is very important to just build yourself up and keep that communication up. I can't imagine what 300 and something number of interviews, I mean, or jobs you posted for, and then only 10 interviews out of that. You know, I can't imagine what that feels like and what it can do to your self-esteem. And I worked this hard for this many years, but I would say to whatever it takes to like boost yourself up and know that you did this for a reason, that's probably one of the most important things to remember as you go through the process.
I want to make sure that any questions that you guys have been answered. So does anyone in the audience have something that they would like to ask our panelists? Yes.
I will ask the question. Hi, I'm Lauren Payne. I work here at Furman University in the Career Center. I'm just curious if there were strategies or tips that you could offer for how our students might go about finding employers that will sponsor you, or that would be more likely to hire our international students. Any tips or strategies that you could offer in that area would be great.
Yeah. So why? Two strategies, like I think it's kind of similar. It's one strategy, but you should check the history of like how many H-1B sponsorship the company has done. Like you just like see the history of like how well they have sponsored people and what has been successful. That's one. I found this out way later on my own, basically, that a company has to be something called E-verified in order to support your OPT, which we can talk about more if like you guys don't know. But if you have a science degree, like a STEM degree, you can get 2 more years after your first year of OPT after graduation. So that was necessary. Like a lot of the companies that I applied to that I mentioned, like 300 something, they were not e-verified. So that means that in the future, they will, since they have not e-verified themselves, they don't really support international students. Hence, they will not really sponsor your visa. So, you know, I made a lot of mistakes at the beginning because like I'm just going to LinkedIn, easy applying, trying to just get a foot and like stop this countdown from going like a ticking time bomb. But you should definitely see which companies support H-1B sponsorship, and that's like a big thing that you should consider. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Just echoing that, you can always look up. First of all, yeah, how many H-1B applications a company has had, how many green card applications it has, but also you can see how much the internationals are getting paid there. So it's kind of 2 for 1. You can figure out what is a fair wage for you, as well as if the company sponsors. In my job search, I knew that I wanted my company to be able to sponsor my visa, so I only targeted large companies. Typically, startups are not e-verified because they'd like to keep their margins pretty low. So they're typically not very open to sponsoring internationals. The other thing was I tried to find hiring managers who were also internationals, so they'd actually understand what I was going through. Because sometimes it's the case where you talk to an HR rep or you talk to somebody, or the hiring manager, and they have no idea what it takes to hire an international student, which puts you kind of in a bad position. So typically, if the company is large enough, there's going to be an international. Try and talk to that person. And then the last couple things is really reaching out to people at the companies. As much as sending your resume through the system and just applying that way might be an effective approach for domestic students, it's generally not helpful for international students. It's literally the easiest filter. Some of it is also gaming the system. So it's kind of like, will you require sponsorship in the future?
Yeah.
There's really no right way to answer that question, because you can say no, because I have OPT, so technically you don't have to sponsor me. Or you can say yes, and then be removed from the system. So it's kind of like, just play that game. I'm not going to tell you how to play that game, but play that game.
I mean, technically, you can change your mind in the future. And I'm like, I want sponsorship now.
Yeah. So I'd say answer that question in the thing that puts you in the best position to get the interview. Because you can always, don't worry about that game. And please feel zero guilt about it. Just answer that question however you want. And then the other thing is really, I started paying people for optimizing my resume, because those tiny details do matter. Kind of like Aneesh, I applied to over 400 positions as well. So part of it is also just applying and forgetting about it, because you don't know which ones are going to reply. And really that's out of your control. So some of it is a numbers game.
Yeah, quickly, I want to chime in, like if you go to LinkedIn and you go to Furman and you can see all the people who are working in certain industry, you'll be able to filter that. So, and then you can see which city they're staying in and what field they're working in. So you can contact them and send your resume to them. Like referral is crucial, especially in this economy, like it's crucial. Like you need to get your thing in somewhere. Like I felt guilty at the beginning. I felt like, oh, this is like nepotism in a way, but then I'm like, no, this is the way it works. So yeah, anyway, go ahead.
So I had a very interesting experience that I started working right after I graduated. Same with Aneesh, but I think one thing I learned is, or the advice I have is, learn about the US immigration system from the very beginning. Even in your first or second year, go on YouTube and search what is the US immigration system like for students in the US. And there are a lot of good resources which will teach you the pathways to becoming like getting a work visa or getting a permanent residence in the US, if that's something you're looking for. I know not everybody wants to stay in the US. They might want to go somewhere else. I think that's something we didn't talk about yet. Yeah, obviously the key to get a job. So for instance, like we all just agreed kind of that most of the big companies are only going to be hiring and considering you because a lot of companies don't want to deal with immigration. So go and find those big top 100 or top 20 companies, I would say, And even beginning of your first or second year, start to get an internship in those companies. Because I would say 80% of the companies, when they hire undergrads with not a lot of experience, they hire them based on an internship they did there. So your goal should be to get an internship in those companies. And if you can get that internship, then most probably you can convert that into a full-time role. I think that's like the most important thing that I did not know in undergrad, that how important it is to get that internship in that big company, because they don't really hire you straight out of college if you have not done an internship with them. So that's one big point I would like to raise. And the other thing is that you can also consider, based on what you learn from the immigration, like you can set yourself up with a PhD. So if that's something you want to consider, that is like it takes the longest time, but it's the most easiest immigration way. If you really want to settle in the US, try to get a PhD and become a very expert in your field. That way you don't have to rely too much on the US company, because that takes off the burden of the company trying to prove that why they should hire you, and like not hire an American. So you really have to exceed the qualification level if you want to solve your immigration problem in the US. So that's something you might want to consider, like get a PhD, become an expert in your field, and that way you can kind of be your own sponsor, quote unquote. Yeah, so that's like the two options I can think of, because even if you find an employer that is willing to sponsor you an H-1B while you're on OPT, you might not get the lottery. It's a lottery to get the work visa. So if you don't get the lottery, you might have to relocate out of the US for 1 year or 2 years if your company. So it's like, it gets a little complicated. Now I'm giving you more examples of what kind of scenarios you could be in. Even though you get a job, it might still not be as simple. So yeah, these are some specific details about the immigration in US. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can ask me, but yeah, thanks.
I'm still trying to figure that out. As you all know, I graduated like semi-recently, but what I did during my job search is I did connect with past international students from like my undergrad even. I wanted to learn more about their experiences. So I kind of got an idea of what I should avoid first. I noticed that like within like from a healthcare specific perspective, I think that identifying and knowing what you could bring to the table that you know for a fact, a lot of people haven't specialized in, or there's like a big need for it in the market right now. That's definitely something to like hold on to, because it is so much easier for you to show something that is unique and lacking, and let's say like what a company would want to see, or what you could bring to the table, than it is to, try to navigate the system in a more traditional way. I would definitely say, Mehmood was talking about it being on a case-by-case basis. So I would look into even like talking to your embassies, because whether it's lottery, whether it's like really anything else, it looks different for us based on our passports. And I would 100% be wary when you're being hired, just making sure that, you set the expectations for yourself, rather than, as Aneesh was saying, I know he had mentioned like, oh, there would be expectation for a visa, etc., but then the company backing out. I've heard of situations where students were taken advantage of, or like getting underpaid because they were in their like green card paperwork era. So, I haven't crossed that bridge yet, but this is what I have been doing to kind of mediate, hoping that this bridge won't, hurt my path too much. And one thing to be careful of is definitely in your like early on years is the whole distinction between a Bachelor of Science versus Bachelor of Art, etc. Just so you can have a very set expectation of how many years you can legally secure here, and understanding what your options be beyond the US if that is not what you're planning on doing. Education is 100%, I would say, a safe way for anyone to stay, really, whether it's a PhD, whether it's like med school. I know it doesn't come easily, it's very expensive, but that's always a safe bet legally.
I'm going to chime in real quick on the PhD route. It's a safe route, but I will preface it in, if you're just doing a PhD for your visa, you're going to be miserable. So I'm just gonna say, throw caution there. 5 years doing something that you're miserable about, it's not worth it. It really isn't. But if you're really interested in actually pursuing that route, then go ahead. Yeah, the cost benefit there is, in my opinion, not worth it.
Okay, I'm gonna mention two things. One is the big companies and their H-1B. They're also equal employer opportunity companies. So that means that they cannot discriminate you based on your nationality, whatever. Does that happen? Yes, it still happens. People still discriminate you. So, but the thing is, what Patrick was saying kind of in that line, if you get an interview and you get a job, they will sponsor you, or they are obligated to, because that otherwise you can sue them. I'm just talking very practically, which I did not know in my first experience, right? So that's done deal. And the second is, we are talking about H-1B, we are talking about STEM, and we are talking about OPT. And what Mehmood mentioned is like they can, a lot of companies, if you don't get the lottery, they take you to 1 or 2 years outside and they bring you back, not on H-1B, but on L1 visa. So L1 visa is basically if like you're exceptional and you work in the same company. Let's say you work at like, I don't know, Google, like in Europe somewhere, and then they'll bring you to US. They will justify that they need you in the US. And these big companies are really good at doing that. They have so much money, they can do it. And but one thing that I did not know until I got to New York is the O1 visa. So the O1 visa, a lot of people know that as the Einstein visa. So I thought it was actually for like researchers and scientists, but that's not true. Most of my artist friends, designer friends, they're on O1 visa. But what did not prepare me is that since like Furman is not an art school, it's not as renowned in that space, right? So if I graduate from Furman, like it won't qualify for an exceptional program that I did. So a lot of people here graduate from Pratt, Parsons, for example, and then they work with world-renowned designers at farms. And like Maria was saying, they're definitely exploited on wages. Like you will see all these big firms, like design firms are filled with international students. And as soon as I see that, I know that they're not getting paid enough, but they stick there 2 to 3 years, get their O1, then they move on, and then they can apply for green card. So that is a step too that you can do. And different O1 visas look different, and for different countries it looks different. Like I know, like for India, I think it's every 3 years you have to renew it, and you can only renew it like 3 times or something like that. So yeah, just check how it applies. Anything that you did in college, like I had a lot of achievements in college, that does not count. After you graduate, you have to build everything from ground zero. So you have to get started working on it pretty quickly. I had 3 years after college, and I only found that out towards like the end of second year. And that's not enough time. Like you have to have publication, you have to have like 12 to 11 recommendation from like top leaders in that like in that area. If you're in a big city like New York, it's not like impossible. You can make connections and you can do it, but it's a difficult task to like, if you didn't go to school in New York, because if you went to school in New York, you know a lot of professors who know these people, and you know they can meet you and they can see your work and you know, write letters for you. But yeah, definitely consider the O1 too. It's very good. It's not lottery based. It's very expensive because the application fee is expensive. Then you have to hire a lawyer. You definitely have to hire a lawyer to make your case. So do keep that in mind.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you have as far as specific strategies?
I think that internships are a big thing. So if you can find the time to do, you know, an internship while you're going to school, and these guys can speak to it better than I can, but I think that you can still get the internship without really the company having to do anything special. Now, if you're like moving and doing it somewhere else, we brought people in under a J visa before that we've had to do while they were still in school. Or maybe they had just graduated and we were bringing them from the UK to the US. But it does help to kind of have your foot in the door before you're looking for the permanent employment. Again, H-1 visa, we've had them as a company turned down probably 4 or 5 times. Nothing to my knowledge to do with us or to the person with the visa, but truly just we get a response that we did not get selected in the lottery. Companies also have a way to do an expedited H-1B process, and if the company's doing an expedited process, you're typically more likely to get selected, is what we've been told by our external legal. So it is always good to, again, have that communication and the relationship to where you can ask and stay on top of the dates. The more you know about the process, the further that you're going to be able to go, even if you're working with a great, hiring department within whatever company it is. I think it should stay knowledgeable and in the know and communicate with people that you're attempting to get a job with.
Two quick more things from that. One, if you guys don't know, the pool from where the lottery is picked for bachelor's and like master's is separate. So you might have a better chance of getting picked in a lottery. Like your odds are better if you have a master's degree, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will get it if you have master's. That's one. And the second is the internship. Be wary of like this thing is that you have 12 months of OPT. So initially when that was announced, it was meant to serve all the summers in between, but you can cumulatively do that, do it as 12 months. So this has become a thing where all international students save up those OPT for after graduating so they can do that together. So when you're doing an internship in between your school years, make sure it's CPT instead of OPT. If you are getting compensated in any way, it's an OPT, it's not a CPT, and it will come out of that 12 months. So let's say you did an internship between sophomore year and junior year, now the 3 months is gone from those 12 months. So do keep that in mind, because Amazon paying you like $6,000 for a summer sounds great, but like it will harm you big time later on because you will have less time to find a, get sponsored. So yeah.
Do y'all have any other questions? Yes.
My question is, how early do you recommend starting the job search? And can you do it while still in school, say senior year of school?
Yeah, I can take it. So how early during school did you start job hunting? Is that the question?
Yes. How early can you start that process?
As early as possible.
How many hours you need to apply to 400 jobs? That's a better question.
So I'll give you a perspective. So I finished up my PhD in May of last year. But I really started my interview process with Google in October of the year before. And I had really started my job hunt June before that. So I had really started job hunting a year before I needed to. Partly because some of these companies, especially the larger companies, the process takes forever. There's multiple rounds. They want verification, they want letters, whatever. The other part is I knew beforehand that Aneesh just said, like he said, most of the time is going to be spent fielding rejection letters. So I wanted to front load that. And then the other thing is I really didn't want to tap into my unemployment. So the earlier you start, the better. Of course, it has to be kind of logical because on the one sense, you want the company to hire you, but if you're applying for a job 9 months before, that might be too early for them. So there's a balance there. The large companies are on very long recruitment cycles. So typically a year, even a year and a half before they'll start hiring you. If you're applying for a startup, they want you today. So that's not going to work. So it really comes back to that balance between what types of companies you're applying to. And then, just like they said, in your early years, really try and get those internships. Internships are very competitive. I can only speak about computer science and tech-related roles, but everybody wants an internship. Domestic students, international students, everybody wants an internship. So the earlier you start searching for those, the better. But yeah, it really just comes down to connections again, even with the internships. At this point, like applying to an internship and applying to a job is effectively the same, especially at the big companies, because they compensate similarly. So the standards are almost the same. So it's, yeah.
Honestly,
I wouldn't wait till 3 months before graduation to start because you're going to be stressed.
honestly, internships, you're getting paid more per hour. because they are not giving you benefits. So they technically compensate it like that. But you also have, like, if you are getting an internship, then you're probably getting hired like a year before. And that's the positive thing for that is, like, companies like big tech companies, they will sponsor, like, send the application for H-1B even before you graduate school. So instead of getting, like, let's say 3 tries, you might even get like 4. I don't know if that's possible, but one of my friends did get it. So that's possible. Like, he worked for like Adobe, so like a really big tech company, right? So yeah, apply as soon as possible. Please do the math on when you're going to get your OPT approval, because a lot of the time and keep checking with whoever your officer is. Sometimes, it might happen that your application never went through. Like, a lot of applications are going, sometimes they might not send it, or just make sure it's your responsibility. And because even if you get a job, you might get the job offer rescinded because like your OPT never got approved, and that has happened to people I know. So definitely do keep that in mind. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more point with how early. I would say most big companies that are international students friendly would hire in fall for the next year. And usually your goal should be to get an internship in fall of the year. So like get an internship in fall for the summer, next summer, if that makes sense. That's like the optimal time to set yourself up for success. And even jobs too, they do hire full-time roles for the May and summer of next year in fall. So yeah, at least if you do the math, it's like 10 months ahead of the starting date. So I would say even go back 6 months before that when you should start preparing. So start preparing the summer a year before you want to start working to really set yourself for this competitive market. Yeah, that's my timeline.
So I'm going to be honest and say that I was one of those students who I applied very late. And the simple truth of the matter is that I did not have the time, and I couldn't make the time because it was either my master's and every single legal responsibility that I had and finding a job, which on its own is very hard when you're, lacking connects or moving from a small city. So what I would encourage you to do if you feel or find yourself in that spot is to focus on one thing throughout your entire time at school. Make note of literally every single experience or big project that you did, because these are the things that will make it so much easier for you to be able to put together a resume that will actually do you justice or do your work justice. It's so easy for us to forget these like small things that employers might pick up on. So I would encourage you to have a running document. I call it my resume tracker, a running document where you just put like small pointers of things that you've done that have meant something to your skill set or to you, and have that be ready. Because in my opinion, if you're not submitting an application, at least send an email. So have some sort of template email where, depending on the field, if you're interested in doing research, reach out to research labs, reach out to the professors, not to the organization. If you're looking into something that is more like, let's say, broad, then try to get yourself out there by submitting an online form, as long as your name is somewhere in the system. So did I freak out? Yes. Do I recommend it? No. But realistically speaking, a lot of people will end up being in my boat. So might as well have something that you can fall back on in case you just, freak out last minute and you have no time to get a job.
One more thing, Patrick mentioned this, like depending on the company, they might want to hire you now or like later. Don't count, like if you have like a job offer like way before, let's say 6 months before, don't count on that offer being there. If the economy goes up and down, they will take your job offer back. Keep looking for a job casually, even if anything, just keep in mind. And I used to put a lot of weight on loyalty, like being loyal to the company, but companies will let you go because of their business strategy didn't work out. So like you should either get the startup job, be there for a month or two, find a bigger company, jump, it's fine. is totally okay. Like we talked about, you're on survival mode. So, be on survival mode. Don't get comfortable as soon as you get the job.
My best friend used to tell me the best time to get a job is before you need one. So stay prepared so that you don't have to get prepared.
Also, that you are not in the you're not in the panic mode then, and now you have a lot more resources we didn't have.
I want to be respectful of y'all's time because I know I did tell you 6:15, but thank you so much for taking your time. I know the students really appreciated it. If y'all want to show your appreciation. It's going to be recorded, so it will live on our YouTube page eventually, and I will also make sure that we send out the contact information for our panelists so that you can reach out with any other questions or things or anything like that. And then we will all be around. We can grab food, drinks, and I know Dr. Cooley wants to mention something else, but thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.